Hello there, how are you tonight? Imagine the moment just before you fall asleep, the quiet, the stillness, the small sense of comfort that slowly settles in. Now imagine that same moment, in a very different time, a place where nights were darker, colder, and far less predictable than what we're used to today. You lie down, not on a soft mattress, but on something much simpler. The air around you feels different, the sounds are unfamiliar. And the sense of comfort is not quite the same. At first, it might seem manageable, just another way of resting, but as the night goes on, small details begin to stand out: the surface beneath you, the shared space, the quiet interruptions, and the realization that sleep itself was a very different experience. Before we settle in, take a moment to like the video. Subscribe if you enjoy these calm journeys, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. It's always a little comforting seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's gently step into the medieval world and explore what it was really like to fall asleep. In a time long before modern comfort, the moment before sleep, even now, carries a quiet kind of mystery. It is the slow drifting away from the weight of the day, the soft surrender of thought, the gentle fading of the world around you. But in medieval times, this moment was not always gentle. You are lying still, but not entirely at ease. The surface beneath you shifts slightly. Not the steady, cushioned support you might expect, but something uneven. Something that reminds you that comfort here is not guaranteed. Your body adjusts, searching for a position that feels right, but never quite finding it. Around you, the room breathes, not in silence, but in quiet movement, a faint creak from wooden beams overhead, the soft rustle of straw, the distant murmur of someone else turning in their sleep, because you are not alone. Sleep, in this time, is rarely a solitary experience, even in stillness. There is presence, someone nearby exhales slowly. Another shifts. The shared space alive with subtle, human rhythms, and yet, beyond these small familiar sounds, there is something else, something less predictable. The night itself. Outside, darkness presses against the walls, not the soft, distant darkness of modern nights, softened by streetlights and glowing windows, but something deeper, thicker, a darkness that feels almost physical. As if it has weight, it seeps through every gap, every crack, every imperfect edge of the structure around you, and with it comes uncertainty. You close your eyes, but your mind does not fully rest, because night, in this world, is not entirely safe. There are no locks you fully trust, no lights you can switch on, no easy way to chase away what might exist beyond your sight. Every sound matters more. A faint movement outside could be nothing, or something, the wind brushing against wood, or footsteps in the distance. You listen. Without meaning to, your senses remain alert, even as your body begins to tire. And this is where the moment before sleep becomes something different, not just rest, but negotiation, a quiet agreement between your body and your surroundings. You begin to let go. Slowly, your breathing steadies, the tension in your shoulders softens. Just a little, the unfamiliar becomes slightly more acceptable. This is simply how things are. There is no alternative. No softer bed waiting. No quieter room to retreat to. Only this moment, this place, this version of night. And so, you adapt. Your mind begins to drift. Not into deep sleep just yet, but into something in between, a space where thoughts blur, where awareness fades at the edges, but never fully disappears, because here, even sleep is lighter, more fragile, more aware. The sounds continue. Steady, unpredictable, a low crackle from somewhere. Perhaps the last remains of a fire dying down, a faint whisper of air slipping through unseen openings, the soft, uneven chorus of breathing around you. It is not peaceful. Not in the way you might expect, but it is familiar, and familiarity becomes its own kind of comfort. Your body sinks slightly, accepting the surface beneath you. No longer resisting it, your thoughts slow, the world outside, the darkness, the uncertainty, begins to feel more distant, not gone, but quieter, further away, and in this delicate balance between awareness and surrender, sleep finally begins to approach, not all at once, not suddenly, but gradually, like a slow tide, pulling you away from the edges of the waking world. You drift, still aware, just slightly, still listening, just faintly, until even that begins to fade, and the medieval night takes you in, not with perfect comfort, not with perfect silence, but with something else, something quieter, older, and far less certain. And as you slip further into sleep, there is one lingering thought: this is only the beginning of the night. Night does not arrive suddenly, it does not fall like a curtain, nor switch the world from light to dark in a single moment. Instead, it creeps, slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed at first. The last light of day lingers across the land, stretched thin over fields and rooftops, fading into softer tones of gold and gray. In medieval times, this moment matters more than it does now, because night is not just the absence of light, it is the beginning of something else. You are still awake, the day has not fully released you yet, but you can feel it slipping away. Outside, the world begins to change, shadows grow longer, merging together, soft at first, then deeper, the familiar paths, the open spaces, the edges of buildings, all begin to lose their sharpness, details fade, shapes blur, certainty begins to dissolve, and with it, a quiet awareness settles in. Night is coming. There are no glowing screens, no streetlights waiting to take over, no gentle hum of electricity to soften the transition, only the sky and the slow disappearance of its light. Inside, preparations begin, not rushed, not frantic, but deliberate. A candle is lit. Its small flame flickers, uncertain at first, then steadies. It does not fill the room with brightness, it simply pushes the darkness back. Just enough. Another flame, perhaps from a hearth, casts a deeper, warmer glow. The walls seem to move with it, shadows stretching and shifting in quiet rhythm. The room becomes smaller, not in size, but in feeling, defined only by what the light can reach. Beyond that, there is only darkness. You move within this space carefully, not because you must, but because instinct tells you to. Objects that were once clear now exist in half-light. Familiar things feel slightly unfamiliar, and outside, the sounds begin. The day has its own voice, filled with movement, with activity, with life that feels visible. But the night speaks differently. A distant rustle, perhaps wind, or something moving through it, a faint call from far away, difficult to place, softer, yet sharper in the silence. The absence of noise becomes its own kind of sound. You notice more, you listen more. Even your own movements seem louder now. A step across the floor, a shift of fabric, the quiet placing of an object. Each sound feels present, unhidden, and as the light continues to fade, the world outside begins to disappear completely, not just visually, but mentally. There is a point, subtle, easy to miss, where you stop thinking about what lies beyond the walls. Because you cannot see it. And what cannot be seen becomes something else entirely, something imagined, something uncertain. This is the true arrival of night in medieval times, not darkness itself, but the change in how the world is perceived inside. The final moments of the day unfold, the fire burns lower, the candle shortens. Its flame smaller now. More delicate, there is a sense, quiet but undeniable, that the time for activity has ended. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, the world has closed in around you. Gently. Completely, and so. You begin to withdraw from it, not abruptly, but gradually, your movement slow, your voice softens. If you speak at all, even thoughts begin to quiet. As if responding to the fading light, because here, night is not resisted, it is accepted. There is no extending the day, no pushing back the hours, only the steady transition from doing to being still, and yet, beneath this calm, there is something else, a subtle tension, not fear. Not exactly, but awareness, because night changes the rules. What was safe in daylight feels different now. What was clear is now hidden, and what is hidden can be anything. You sit or lie down, already feeling the shift inside yourself. The body grows heavier, the mind slower, but never completely at ease. The last light flickers again, the room dims further, and for a moment, everything feels suspended, balanced between what was and what is coming. Then, quietly, the day is gone, night has taken its place, not with force, not with sound, but with presence, a presence that fills every corner, every space, every thought left unguarded. You are inside it now, fully, and just like that, the world you knew a short while ago feels distant, replaced by something softer, darker, and far less certain. And as you settle deeper into this new state, one quiet realization lingers: the night has only just begun. By now, the night has settled in completely, not just outside, but within the spaces you inhabit. There is no lingering glow of day left to soften it, no distant lights on the horizon, no quiet hum of anything beyond what already exists, only darkness. In medieval times, darkness is not a backdrop, it is an active presence. You feel it, even with your eyes open, because without electricity, without any constant source of light, the world does not gently dim, it disappears. The small flame from a candle, or the fading glow of a fire, is not enough to hold it back for long. Light here is fragile, temporary, something that must be protected, maintained, and eventually surrendered. You notice how limited it is. The candle beside you flickers again, casting uncertain shapes along the walls. The shadows it creates are not still, they move, stretching and shifting with every slight motion of air, sometimes slowly, almost peacefully, other times just enough to make you look twice. And beyond that small circle of light, there is nothing, not darkness in layers, not shapes waiting to be understood, but complete absence, a space where your eyes cannot adjust. Because there is nothing to adjust to, you could stare into it and see no more than when your eyes are closed. This is something modern life rarely allows, true darkness, the kind that removes distance, depth, and direction, the kind that makes the world feel smaller, yet somehow more unknown at the same time. You lie still, aware of this. The light flickers again. For a brief moment, it grows stronger, then weaker, and you realize how much depends on it. Without that small flame, the room would vanish, not physically, but perceptually. Everything familiar would be replaced by something unseeable, and in that unseeing. Imagination begins to take its place. You hear it first, a faint sound. Difficult to locate, not loud, not urgent, but present, in daylight. You might ignore it, hear. You cannot, because without sight, sound becomes sharper, more important, more suggestive. Another sound follows. Softer this time, perhaps the structure settling. Would adjusting to the cooling air, or something else. There is no easy way to know. And that uncertainty lingers. Gently, persistently, you shift slightly. The surface beneath you responding with a quiet rustle. Even your own movement feels amplified. The candle flame reacts, bending slightly, then recovering. Its small light feels almost protective now, a boundary, a fragile line between what you can understand and what you cannot, and yet you know it will not last. Candles burn down, fires fade, and eventually all light is gone. This is the reality of night in medieval times, not just darkness, but the inevitability of it. There is a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when you begin to prepare for that, not physically, but mentally. You stop relying on sight. You begin to accept that soon there will be nothing to see. Your awareness shifts inward, to your breathing, to the position of your body, to the small, consistent sounds that reassure you that you are still where you think you are. The outside world becomes distant, not because it has changed, but because you can no longer perceive it, and without perception, connection fades. This is where the mind begins to wander, not actively, not with intention, because here, in near total darkness, the mind begins to create its own light, and that light is unpredictable. You are aware of this, just faintly aware that what you imagine can feel as real as what you once saw, and yet you allow it, because there is nothing else to replace it. The candle burns lower, the flame smaller now, its movement slower, weaker. The shadows stretch further, consuming more of the room. The boundary shrinks, and with it, the sense of control. You feel it, not as fear, but as a quiet surrender. This is how the night works. This is how it has always worked. You do not fight it, you move with it, your eyes close. Not because you must, but because there is little difference now between open and closed. The darkness is the same, inside and out. Your breathing deepens, the sounds soften, blending into something less distinct. The last flicker of light fades, almost unnoticed, and then there is nothing left to see, only presence, only awareness. Slowly dimming, and in that complete and quiet darkness, sleep begins to take a stronger hold, not as an escape, but as a natural continuation of what the night has already begun, because here, a darkness is not the absence of the world, it is what remains when everything else is gone. By now, the darkness feels familiar, not comforting. Not entirely, but something you've begun to accept, and within that darkness, one quiet question begins to take shape. Where exactly do you sleep in the modern world? The answer is simple: a bed, a room, a space designed for rest. But in medieval times, sleep does not belong to a single place. It happens wherever it can. You shift slightly, becoming aware again of the surface beneath you. It is not uniform, not crafted for comfort, but assembled from what is available: straw, loosely gathered, pressed into a rough sack or spread beneath a simple covering. Sometimes it holds its shape, other times it shifts, leaving uneven pockets beneath your body. You adjust slowly, trying to find a place where your weight settles evenly, but perfection is not the goal here, only enough softness to rest, enough support to endure the night, beneath the straw. There may be wood, hard, unyielding. A quiet reminder of the structure beneath you, every movement carries through it. A faint creak. A subtle response, the surface is alive. In its own quiet way, and then there is the space around you. You are not in a room designed for sleep alone. This space serves many purposes, by day. It is a place of work, of gathering, of life, by night. It becomes something else, transformed. Not by design, but by necessity. Objects remain where they are. Tools, benches, storage chests, all resting quietly in the shadows. There is no separation, no clear boundary between living and resting, only a shift in how the space is used, and you exist within that shift, sometimes. Sleep happens near the warmth of a hearth, the last heat of the fire lingering, offering a small comfort against the cold. Other times it is wherever there is room. A corner, a narrow space between objects, a place that feels slightly less exposed, because space is shared, not occasionally, but almost always. Families, workers, travelers, all finding rest within the same environment, each person adjusting, accommodating, becoming part of a quiet arrangement. You sense it even now, the presence of others. Close, unavoidable, a shift here, a breath there, small reminders that this space is not yours alone, and yet this is normal, expected, privacy, as you understand it, does not exist in the same way. Sleep is communal, a shared surrender to the night, and within that, a different kind of awareness forms. You are never completely alone, but never completely undisturbed. Your body adapts, learning to rest despite movement, despite sound, despite proximity. It does not resist, because there is no alternative. You notice the air, it feels heavier here, not unpleasant, but lived in, carrying the faint traces of the day. Of firewood, of fabric, of human presence. It does not feel empty, it feels occupied, and this too becomes part of sleep, a subtle layer, barely noticed after a while, but always there. The boundaries of your resting place are not fixed, they shift slightly as bodies move, as space is adjusted. As the night unfolds, you become aware of your position in relation to everything else, careful, even in stillness, because movement is felt, shared. The straw beneath you rustles again. Soft but distinct, you settle more consciously now, finding a position that asks for less adjustment, less disruption, because here, rest is not just personal, it is collective, and slowly you begin to understand something. Sleep in medieval times is not about perfect comfort, it is about adaptation, about finding stillness within imperfection, about allowing the body to rest, even when the environment does not fully support it, and there is something quietly grounding about that. The simplicity of it, no excess, no layers of separation, just you, the surface beneath you, and the space around you, unchanged, unhidden, real. The darkness remains, the sounds continue. Soft, familiar now, the presence of others fades into the background. No longer something you actively notice, only something you feel. Faintly, your body grows heavier, not because the surface has improved, but because you've stopped expecting it to. You've adjusted, accepted, and in that acceptance, tension releases, just enough. Your breathing slows again, the small discomforts still there, but less important now. because sleep does not require perfection, only surrender, and here. In this shared, simple, imperfect space, you begin to drift once more, carried not by comfort, but by quiet endurance, and as your awareness softens, one gentle thought lingers: this place may not be built for sleep, but sleep finds it. Anyway, not everyone, in medieval times, slept as you do now. There are places not far from where you rest, where the night feels different, not brighter, not entirely safer, but softer. You can almost imagine it, a room set apart from the shared space, not large by modern standards, but defined, walls that feel more complete, more deliberate, a door, perhaps, that closes, not perfectly, but enough to create the sense of separation, and within that space, a bed, not straw loosely spread across the floor, but something elevated, structured, built with intention, a wooden frame. Sturdy, crafted by hand, it lifts the sleeper above the ground, away from the cold that gathers there. Already, that changes everything. You picture it now. Slowly, layers, not many, but more than what you know, a base of rope or woven material, stretched across the frame. Above that, a mattress of sorts, still filled with straw, or feathers, or wool, depending on what can be afforded, not perfectly soft, but softer, more consistent, more forgiving beneath the body, and then coverings, thicker fabric, heavier cloth, perhaps even something that holds warmth more effectively through the night. These are small differences, but in this world, they matter, because comfort here is relative, and even a slight improvement feels significant. The air in this room feels different too. Less crowded, less shared, the presence of others reduced, not entirely gone, but distant enough to fade into the background. Sleep here is quieter, not silent, but contained. Movements do not travel as far. Sounds feel softened. There is space to shift without disturbing someone else, space to breathe without awareness of another body nearby. And then there is the canopy, not always, but often enough, fabric draped above the bed, hanging down along its sides. At first glance, it might seem decorative, but it serves a purpose. It traps warmth, blocks drafts, creates a smaller world within the room, a space within a space, and inside that, the sleeper lies, surrounded, protected. Not completely, but more than before. The darkness here behaves differently. It still exists, still fills the corners, still presses against the edges of light, but it feels held at a distance. The bed, the fabric, the elevation, all create a subtle barrier, a sense that the night is just slightly further away. You imagine lying there, the surface beneath you yielding more easily, your body settling faster, the small adjustments you once made less necessary now. Comfort, not perfect, but closer, and with it, something else, a deeper release, because when the body is at ease, even slightly, the mind follows. But this comfort is not without its own awareness, because separation brings its own kind of quiet. The absence of others, once a constant presence, now feels noticeable. There are fewer sounds, fewer reminders that you are not alone, and in that stillness, the mind can wander differently, more freely, but also more inward. The canopy above you shifts gently, responding to faint movement in the air. The fabric breathes, almost imperceptibly. Light from a candle, perhaps placed nearby, filters through it. Softened, diffused, turning the space into something almost dreamlike. A gentle enclosure, the outside world. Reduced to suggestion, you are aware of it. Faintly, but it no longer feels immediate. This is what wealth changes. In medieval sleep, not the night itself, but your relationship to it, you are not removed from darkness, only distanced from its edges, and that distance creates a sense of control, even if it is only partial, even if it is only illusion, you feel it. In the way your body relaxes more quickly, in the way your breathing deepens. Sooner, in the way your thoughts take longer to hold on, because here, sleep is not just endurance, it becomes something closer to comfort, still imperfect, still influenced by the same night. The same uncertainty, but shaped differently, guided, softened, and yet, beneath all of it, the same truth remains. The candle will still burn down, the darkness will still come, the night will still unfold in its own quiet way, no matter how elevated the bed or how thick the fabric. It cannot be stopped, only delayed, only gently kept at bay. And as you imagine yourself within this space, resting, surrounded, slightly more at ease, one quiet thought settles in. Comfort may change the experience of sleep, but it does not change the nature of the night. The softness you imagined before fades, not completely, but enough to remind you that for most people in medieval times, sleep is far less forgiving. You feel it again now. More clearly than before, the surface beneath you is not elevated, not layered with care. It is direct, simple, unrefined, straw, loosely gathered, spread across wood, or packed into a rough sack that has long since lost its shape. At first, it might seem adequate, even natural, but as your body settles, the details begin to reveal themselves. The straw is uneven, some areas compress easily, others resist, small stems press upward, shifting slightly with every movement. They do not disappear beneath you. They remain present, subtle, but persistent. You adjust your position, slowly, turning just enough to ease one point of pressure, only to find another. There is no perfect alignment here, only compromise. Beneath the straw, the wood is constant, firm, unyielding. It does not respond to your weight, it simply exists. Steady, unmoving. A quiet foundation beneath everything else, and through the thin layer above it. You can feel it, not sharply, not painfully, but enough to remind you that comfort is limited. The body takes time to adapt to this. It does not relax immediately. Muscles remain slightly engaged, adjusting, compensating, searching for a position that requires less effort. You notice it in small ways, a shoulder that does not quite settle, the hip that presses just a little too firmly, a subtle tension that lingers, even as you try to release it. And yet, over time, something begins to change, not the surface, but your response to it. You stop searching, stop expecting the discomfort to disappear. Instead, you begin to accept it. Your movements grow smaller, more deliberate. You settle into a position, not because it is perfect, but because it is enough, and in that acceptance, the body begins to soften, just slightly. The straw rustles again. A dry, quiet sound that blends into the stillness of the room. It shifts beneath you, creating new shapes, new points of contact, unpredictable, but familiar. This is how sleep begins here, not with comfort, but with adjustment. The air around you carries a faint, earthy scent, straw, wood, fabric worn by use. It is not unpleasant, but it is real, unfiltered, a reminder of the materials that surround you, support you, define your rest. There is no barrier between you and these things, no softness to separate the body from its environment, only closeness, directness, the connection between you. And where you lie, you become aware of your own weight, how it presses downward, how it distributes itself across the uneven surface, each part of your body negotiating its place, finding balance. Even when none is perfectly offered, and slowly, almost without noticing, the discomfort becomes less important, not gone, but quieter. Your awareness shifts away from the surface toward something else, your breathing, the rhythm of it. Steady. Grounding, the gentle rise and fall. Consistent. Predictable, in contrast to everything else. It feels stable, reliable, something you can follow. As the rest of the world fades slightly, the sounds around you continue. Soft. Distant now. The presence of others. Still there. But less defined, because your focus has narrowed, not outward, but inward. This is how the body learns to rest in imperfect conditions. It does not demand change, it adapts, it reduces what matters to what is essential: breath, stillness, time, and with each passing moment, the need for comfort fades further, replaced by something simpler, the need to sleep. Your muscles loosen. Just enough, the tension that once held them. Easing slowly, the uneven surface no longer feels like an obstacle, only a constant, and constants are easier to accept. Your body becomes heavier, not sinking into softness, but settling into place, anchored. Stable. In its own way, and in that stillness, something quiet emerges, a kind of resilience, not forced, not conscious, but natural, the ability to rest. Even when conditions are not ideal, the ability to sleep. Not because everything is comfortable, but because the body knows how to let go anyway. Your eyes close fully now, the sensation of straw still present, but distant, the firmness beneath. No longer demanding attention, only there, only part of the experience, and as your breathing deepens, and your awareness softens further, one gentle realization lingers: sleep here is not given, it is earned, through patience, through adaptation, and through the quiet strength of simply enduring. By now, you have adjusted to the surface beneath you, the straw, the wood, the quiet imperfections. They no longer demand your full attention, but something else remains, something harder to ignore. The space around you is not empty, it never was, in medieval times. Sleep is rarely a solitary act, it is shared, not occasionally. Not by choice, but by necessity. You feel it first. Not through sight, but through presence, the subtle awareness that you are not alone in this moment, even with your eyes closed. You can sense it, a shift nearby, a breath slightly out of rhythm with your own, a quiet movement. Soft, but unmistakable, another person. Close enough to be felt. Even without touch, the distance between bodies is small, not uncomfortable. Perhaps, but noticeable. There is no clear boundary, no defined personal space, only an understanding. Silent. Unspoken, that this is how things are. You lie still. More aware of your own movements now, because here, every movement matters. A small adjustment sends a ripple through the space, straw rustles, fabric shifts, someone nearby responds. Unconsciously, a turn, a breath, a faint sound in return. The night becomes a quiet exchange of presence, unintentional, but constant. You begin to notice patterns, the steady breathing of one person, the irregular rhythm of another, someone who settles quickly, someone who shifts often, each individual, existing within the same space, but carrying their own experience of the night, and yet all connected. This closeness changes something, it softens the isolation. But replaces it with awareness. You are not alone with your thoughts, but neither are you free from interruption. Sleep here is not uninterrupted, it moves, shifts, adjusts, just like the people within it. You feel a shoulder. Not touching, but near enough to be known, a presence at your side. Steady, warm, real. It is not intrusive, but it is constant, and over time, your body begins to account for it. You limit your movement, not out of discomfort, but out of instinct, a quiet respect for the shared space, because rest here is collective. Each person's stillness contributes to the whole. Each movement affects it. You begin to understand something deeper. Sleep in medieval times is not just about the body, it is about coexistence, about finding rest. Not in isolation, but within the presence of others, and that presence changes the experience. The darkness feels different, less empty, less vast, because it is filled with life, subtle, quiet, but undeniably there. The sounds of the night blend together now, breathing, shifting, the faint rustle of straw, all forming a kind of rhythm, not perfectly synchronized, but consistent enough to feel steady, almost like a shared pulse. You find yourself adjusting to it, your breathing slowing, aligning, just slightly, with the patterns around you. Not intentionally, but naturally, the body seeks harmony. Even here, even in this imperfect arrangement, and with that harmony, comes a strange kind of comfort, not the comfort of softness or space, but of presence, the knowledge that you are not facing the night alone, that even in darkness, there are others beside you, living, resting, enduring, just as you are. And yet, there is also a quiet tension within it, because closeness means awareness, and awareness means vulnerability. There is no barrier, no separation, nothing that fully shields you from the actions of others. You trust. Not by choice, but because you must. The night deepens, the movements around you grow fewer, slower. As others begin to settle more completely, the space becomes quieter, more still. The shared rhythm stabilizes, and within that stillness, something shifts again. The awareness that once felt sharp begins to soften. The presence of others fades slightly into the background, not gone, but no longer demanding attention. Only there, only part of the environment. Like the straw, the wood, the air, your body relaxes further. The need to remain aware lessens, because familiarity has taken its place. This is normal, this is expected, this is how sleep happens. Here, together, not perfectly, not silently, but consistently. And as your breathing deepens, and your awareness begins to drift, one quiet realization remains. In this shared space, sleep is not something you enter alone, but something you become part of. Sleep, in medieval times, is rarely divided into neat boundaries, not between people, and not even between roles. What you begin to notice now is how often sleep is shared not just with strangers, but with family. The room is not large, it does not need to be, because in this time, space is not measured by comfort, but by necessity. You find yourself within it, not alone, not isolated, but surrounded, a family unit, gathered in the same enclosed space. For warmth, for safety, for practicality, there is no separation between day life and sleep life in the way you might expect. Everything exists in layers, overlapping, coexisting. You lie down, and the room does not empty. It simply transforms around you. Others settle as well, a parent, perhaps, adjusting something nearby, a child, already half asleep, their breathing uneven, soft, unpredictable. Another figure shifts closer to the wall, making space where none really exists. The room feels full, not chaotic, but dense. Every inch of it is used, every corner accounted for. There is no wasted space, and because of that, there is no true distance. You become aware of how close everything is, not uncomfortably so, but constantly. A shared rhythm begins to form, not planned, not intentional, just existing. Breathing patterns overlap, movements happen in sequence. Then pause. Then continue again. The room does not settle all at once, it settles in stages. You notice small sounds more clearly now, a quiet sigh, a fabric shift, the soft settling of weight onto straw or wood. These are not disruptions, they are part of the environment, part of the experience, and within this closeness, something else emerges. A kind of quiet responsibility, even in rest. You are aware of others, a small movement from you affects someone nearby, a turn, a stretch. Even the smallest adjustment carries outward, so you become careful, not tense, but considerate. Your body learns to move less, to occupy space without demanding it, to exist quietly, and in this way, sleep becomes something shared not just physically, but emotionally. There is a sense of connection here. Even without conversation, even without acknowledgement, you are resting alongside people whose lives are intertwined with yours, not by choice, but by circumstance, and in that shared circumstance, there is a strange form of comfort. Not loud, not obvious, but steady. You hear a child shift closer to an adult. The faint rustle of fabric as they settle in, the hand perhaps rests gently somewhere unseen, offering reassurance without words. The room absorbs these small interactions, they become part of the atmosphere, part of the night. Outside, the world is still dark, still uncertain, but inside this crowded space, there is structure, not physical structure alone, but human structure. The presence of others gives shape to the night, it defines it. You are not drifting alone through darkness, you are within a collective stillness, and that stillness is not perfect, it is layered. One person breathes deeply, another lightly, one shifts often, another remains still, yet all exist within the same confined space, coexisting, adjusting, unconsciously synchronizing. The air itself feels different here. Warmer, heavier, carrying traces of life, of bodies close together, of shared warmth against the cold outside. It is not unpleasant, but it is unmistakable. You become aware of the absence of privacy, not as loss, but as normality. There is no expectation of solitude here, only shared existence, and gradually, even that awareness begins to fade. The presence of others becomes less distinct, not disappearing, but blending into the background of the night, like the sound of wind outside, or the faint crackle of a dying fire, still there, but no longer demanding attention. Your body relaxes again, more fully this time, because familiarity has taken hold. The rhythms around you, the closeness, the density of space, all become part of what sleep means here. Not ideal, not separate, but integrated. And as your breathing deepens, and your thoughts slow, one quiet understanding remains. In medieval times, even rest is shared, and in that sharing, the night becomes something larger than yourself. The night changes again, not in sound, not in sight, but in feeling, a subtle shift in the air, one you notice slowly, almost reluctantly. In medieval times, temperature is not something you control, it is something you endure, and as the hours deepen, the warmth that once lingered in the room begins to fade, not suddenly, but steadily. The fire, if there is one, no longer burns with strength, its glow has softened, reduced to a quiet pulse of embers, still alive, but barely. the heat it once offered no longer reaches far, only those closest to it feel its comfort now, and even that comfort is fragile. You pull yourself slightly closer. Not necessarily toward the fire, but toward anything that holds warmth. The body begins to respond before thought does, a natural adjustment, a quiet search for heat. The air feels different now, thinner, colder, more present against the skin. It moves through small gaps, between wooden boards, through cracks in walls that were never fully sealed. There is no resistance against it, only acceptance. You become aware of your own body in a different way, not as rest, but as warmth, a source of heat that slowly dissipates into the surrounding space, and so you conserve it. Movement decreases, energy softens, even breathing feels more intentional, as if less motion might preserve what little warmth remains. The bedding beneath you offers little protection, straw and cloth, materials that were never meant to fully insulate against cold. They soften the contact with the ground, but do not remove its presence. The chill remains underneath, steady, waiting around you. Others respond in similar ways. Bodies draw closer together, not always consciously, but instinctively, a shared effort to retain warmth. The room, already crowded, becomes even tighter in feeling, not uncomfortable in movement, but dense with presence. Heat becomes something collective, not owned, but shared. A quiet economy of warmth. You notice how still everything becomes. Movement slows across the room. Even the smallest shifts seem deliberate now, because motion releases heat, and stillness preserves it. The fire crackles faintly, a soft reminder that it is still there, but its influence is shrinking. The shadows it casts grow longer, colder, more stretched across the walls. The light feels weaker now, less like protection, more like memory. Outside, the night continues without change. Cold air presses against the structure, unbothered, unstopped. It does not rush, it simply exists, and continues existing. You feel it even without direct contact, a reminder that the world beyond this room is not concerned with comfort. Inside, the body adapts further. Muscles tighten slightly, then release, in cycles of small adjustments, finding positions that reduce exposure, that preserve heat, that require less effort to maintain. Even thoughts begin to slow, not from sleepiness alone, but from conservation. The body prioritizes warmth over awareness, and awareness begins to fade. There is no single moment where the cold becomes overwhelming. It does not arrive dramatically, it accumulates, layer by layer, hour by hour, until it simply becomes part of the environment. And once it is accepted, it is no longer resisted. The room remains shared. Breathing continues. Soft movements occur occasionally, but less frequently now. Everyone has adapted, not perfectly, but sufficiently. The night is no longer about comfort, it is about endurance, about maintaining enough warmth to continue resting, and in that shared effort, something quiet forms, a kind of unity, born not from ease, but from necessity. The fire dims further, almost gone now, only a faint glow remains, barely outlining the shapes within the room. The darkness returns, slowly reclaiming space, but this time, it feels different, not empty, but cold. And as your body settles deeper into stillness, conserving what warmth remains, your awareness begins to soften again, not because the night has become easier, but because your body has learned how to stay within it. And in that final balance between cold air and fading heat, sleep begins to take hold once more, quietly, carefully, as if even sleep itself must be conserved. In the absence of light, sound becomes sharper, not louder, but clearer. In medieval times, the night is never truly silent, it only becomes differently alive. You notice it gradually. At first, it feels like stillness, a pause in the world, but as your awareness settles, the night begins to reveal itself, softly, carefully. There is the sound of the structure itself, wood, settling, adjusting to the cooling air, a faint creak. Distant, uncertain, not sudden enough to alarm you, but present enough to notice. It is a reminder that even the space around you is not fixed, it breathes in its own way. Then there is the wind, not always visible, not always strong, but always there. It moves through gaps, between stones, under doors, along edges that were never fully sealed, a quiet passing presence. Sometimes it sounds like a whisper, sometimes like a slow exhale across the surface of the world. You begin to listen without meaning to, not out of fear, but awareness, because in the night, hearing replaces sight, and every small sound carries weight. A shift of straw nearby, a soft turn of fabric, someone adjusting their position, barely disturbing the air. These are ordinary sounds, but in darkness, they feel closer, more defined. The fire, now reduced or gone entirely, no longer masks anything, no crackling warmth to fill the silence. Only absence. And what rises within it, you become aware of breathing, not just your own, but others, multiple rhythms, overlapping, uncoordinated, some slow and steady, others lighter, uneven. Together they form something subtle, a quiet pattern that exists without intention. It is not music, but it has rhythm, and your mind begins to follow it. Without permission, you notice how sound travels differently here, without modern barriers. Without thick insulation or sealed walls, everything feels closer. A movement in one corner of the room reaches another, a small sound becomes part of the whole, not amplified, but shared, and so the room feels connected in a way that is not visible, only heard. There are moments when everything aligns into near silence, not true silence, but close enough to feel like it. In those moments, even your own thoughts seem louder, a faint internal echo, but it never lasts long. Another sound appears, a shift, a creak, a breath, and the world returns. The night is never empty here, it is layered, built from small, living sounds that continue even when the body is still. You begin to realize that sleep, in this environment, does not require silence. It adapts to sound, learns to exist alongside it, because silence, in its pure form, is rare. Even the cold has a sound, a subtle pressure against the walls, a distant movement through unseen gaps. Not audible in a direct way, but felt through everything else, and slowly, your perception begins to change. You stop identifying each sound individually. Instead, they merge into background, into atmosphere, into something that no longer demands attention, a kind of nighttime texture, and within that texture, your body begins to relax again, because nothing here signals urgency, nothing demands response, everything is simply happening, existing, continuing. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm around you, not intentionally, but naturally, as if the body understands that resistance is unnecessary. The mind follows, thoughts become softer, less structured, more fragmented, until even awareness of sound begins to fade into the edges of perception. The night remains full of noise, but you are no longer actively holding it, and in that release, something quiet happens. The sounds do not disappear, but they no longer interrupt. They become part of the environment you are drifting within, like air, like darkness, like time itself. And as your awareness continues to soften, one gentle understanding remains. In medieval nights, silence is never the absence of sound, it is learning not to be disturbed by it. After the weight of darkness, light feels different, not brighter in a modern sense, but meaningful. In medieval times, light is never constant, it is earned, maintained, protected. You notice it the moment it appears, a small flame somewhere in the room, or the faint glow of embers still holding on to life. It does not remove the night, it simply reshapes it. The darkness does not disappear, it retreats, slowly, reluctantly, as if unwilling to let go, and within that small circle of warmth, the world becomes visible again, not fully, not clearly, but enough. Shadows return. But now they are defined, not unknown shapes in total absence, but soft forms guided by light. Edges of objects emerge from the dark, wooden beams, simple belongings, resting figures, everything reintroduced. Gently into perception, you become aware of how delicate this balance is. The flame is small, fragile, it flickers with even the slightest movement of air, as if the entire room depends on its patience, and in many ways it does, because without it, everything collapses back into darkness. The fire, if present, behaves differently than candlelight. It does not stay still, it breathes, expands, contracts, shifts, its glow reaches further, then pulls back again. A slow rhythm of light and shadow across the room. It does not fully illuminate, it suggests, and that suggestion is enough to shape the space. You begin to notice how people respond to it, how bodies orient themselves subtly toward warmth, how faces appear briefly in soft orange tones before fading again into shadow. There is something deeply human in this, not just visibility, but recognition. Light allows presence to be seen again, even in fragments, even in passing, and that changes the feeling of the room, not into brightness, but into familiarity. The darkness no longer feels absolute, it now has boundaries, edges, places where it begins and ends. The flame becomes a reference point, a center. Everything else organizes itself around it. You watch it flicker, each movement slightly different from the last, unpredictable, yet calming in its repetition. It does not demand attention, but it holds it, softly. You notice how sound feels different here too, less dominant, because sight has returned. Even partially, the mind no longer relies only on hearing to understand space, it relaxes. Slightly, but the fire also carries responsibility. It must be tended, not constantly, but enough to remain alive. A small reminder that comfort here is never passive, it requires maintenance, even in sleep-adjacent stillness. Someone must eventually feed the fire, adjust it, protect it from fading too quickly, and in that knowledge, there is quiet awareness. Light is not guaranteed, it is temporary. You begin to understand how precious even this small illumination is, because it transforms perception entirely. Without it, the room becomes uncertain. With it, everything becomes grounded again, even if only partially. The flame flickers again, a slightly stronger movement this time, casting longer shadows across the walls. They stretch, then soften, then retreat, as if the room is breathing alongside it. You feel yourself becoming calmer, not because everything is visible, but because something is, a point of certainty within uncertainty. The fire does not erase the night, it negotiates with it, and that negotiation shapes everything. The warmth spreads slowly, not far, but enough to soften the immediate space, enough to remind the body that heat still exists, that comfort is not entirely gone. And as you remain within this dimly lit world, your thoughts begin to slow again, not into darkness this time, but into something gentler, a softened awareness, held between light and shadow, and in that balance, sleep begins to approach once more, not hidden in darkness, but guided by flickering light. Night in medieval times is not only darkness, it is meaning, at least. That is how it often feels to those living within it, because when the world grows quiet and light becomes scarce, the mind does what it has always done, it begins to interpret. You lie still now, aware of the fading glow in the room. The candle or fire is weaker than before, not gone, but fragile, and in that fragility, imagination becomes louder, not in a chaotic way, but in a subtle, persistent way. you start noticing how every sound seems to carry intention, a creak in the wood becomes something more than structure adjusting, a distant wind becomes something passing, something unknown, in medieval times. The night is not just a physical condition, it is layered with belief, stories that exist just beneath everyday thought, not always spoken aloud, but present enough to shape how silence is understood. You are aware of this now. Even if only faintly, because when visibility fades, explanation replaces it. An explanation, in this time, is often shaped by mystery. You shift slightly on your bedding, the straw responds with a soft rustle, ordinary, but in the quiet of the night. Even ordinary things feel more noticeable, more deliberate. Your mind begins to fill gaps that light once covered, corners of the room that cannot be clearly seen, become places where uncertainty gathers. Not fear exactly, but awareness without clarity. You are not alone in the room, you know this from earlier chapters, but now, that presence feels different, less physical, more imagined, because darkness changes perception of distance. What is near feels uncertain, what is unseen feels undefined, and so the mind gently fills the space. Not with certainty, but with possibility. You think of stories passed through generations, whispers of things in the night, not always believed, but never entirely dismissed, because in a world without constant light, everything unexplainable feels closer. You listen again, the room is still alive with quiet sound, breathing, movement, the subtle presence of others resting nearby, all of it real, all of it grounding, but layered beneath that reality is the mind's interpretation, a second version of the room, one shaped not by sight, but by absence of it. You become aware of how easily the mind shifts between the two. What is known and what is suggested, and in the night, suggestion often feels stronger. The fire, if still present, flickers again, casting uneven light across the room. For a moment, shapes become clearer, defined, recognizable, and with that clarity, the mind relaxes slightly, because certainty returns, even briefly. But when the flame dims again, uncertainty returns with it, not sharply, but gradually, like a thought drifting back into silence. You begin to understand something subtle here. Fears in this time are not always external, they are shaped by environment, by limited perception, by how much the world hides itself, and yet they are not constant, they come and go. Like waves, you notice how your breathing remains steady. Even as thoughts drift, even as imagination fills empty space, the body does not fully follow the mind's interpretations. It remains grounded, still, present, and that grounding matters more than anything else, because it anchors you back into reality, into the room, into the shared presence of others. You are not isolated in thought. Even if perception feels personal, there is still warmth nearby, still movement, still life continuing in quiet forms, and slowly, the imagined edges soften. The mind begins to release what it created, not through force, but through fatigue, through stillness, through the natural slowing of thought. The room becomes simpler again, less interpreted, more directly experienced, and as that shift happens, something calming returns, not full clarity, not full darkness, but balance, a middle space between what is known and what is imagined, and in that space, sleep becomes easier to approach, not because fear disappears, but because it no longer leads the experience, only exists beside it, quiet, distant, and fading. Sleep, in medieval times, does not behave the way you expect it to. It does not arrive once and stay until morning. It comes in stages, pieces, fragments of rest, separated by quiet intervals of wakefulness. At first, this feels strange to imagine, but within the medieval night, it makes sense, because the night itself is long, longer than what modern life is structured around, and without artificial light. Without clocks shaping behavior in the same way, time feels different, less rigid, more fluid. You drift into sleep earlier than you might now, not immediately after darkness falls. But soon after the world settles, there is a quiet acceptance that the day is over. And rest is natural, and so you fall into sleep, not deeply at first, but gradually, like sinking into water that slowly warms around you. The body relaxes, thoughts dissolve, the awareness softens, and for a time there is rest. But then something changes, not suddenly, not dramatically, just gently. You become aware again, not fully awake, but no longer fully asleep either, a strange middle state. The world is still dark, still quiet, but your mind has surfaced slightly. This is not disruption, it is normal, expected. People in medieval times often experience this without questioning it. You lie still, listening, not searching for meaning, just existing in the pause between sleep cycles. The room around you remains unchanged, others are in similar states, some may be asleep, some may be in this same quiet in between. The boundary is unclear, there is no pressure to immediately return to deep sleep, no urgency, only stillness. You may shift slightly, adjusting your position. The straw beneath you responds softly, the wood below remains steady, everything feels familiar again. But differently aware, thoughts may appear during this time, not structured thoughts, but loose ones, fragments, reflections, small observations of the night, not troubling, just present. You might listen to the breathing around you again, notice how consistent it is, how it continues even when awareness rises, a reminder that rest is still happening, even in partial wakefulness. And then something subtle occurs. The mind begins to slow again, without effort, without intention. The space between thoughts stretches longer, softer, until awareness begins to fade once more, and sleep returns, not as a single event, but as a continuation, a second descent into rest, deeper this time, more stable. The body settles further than before, as if it recognizes this rhythm, as if it understands that sleep is not one long passage, but a cycle, a gentle oscillation between awareness and surrender. You are not disturbed by this anymore. It becomes part of the night's structure, part of how rest is experienced. And somewhere in that understanding, there is calm. Because nothing is broken, nothing is interrupted in a harmful way. It is simply how the body moves through time here. Even darkness itself seems to participate in this rhythm, not constant, but layered, shifting between presence and absence. Just like consciousness, and as you drift again, the boundary between sleep and wakefulness becomes softer, less defined, more natural, until even the idea of interruption loses meaning. Only rhythm remains, only night, unfolding in its own quiet pattern, and within that pattern, you settle deeper once more. There is a moment, in the deepest part of the night, when everything changes again, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly. You wake, or rather, you return, not fully alert, not fully asleep, somewhere in between. The world around you is still dark, still unchanged, still resting in the same silence it held before, but your awareness has shifted. You lie still for a moment, unsure why you are awake. There is no urgency, no alarm, no clear reason, and yet consciousness has arrived. This is not unusual in medieval times. The night is long enough for this to happen naturally. Bodies rest in cycles, not always in one continuous stretch, so this waking is not strange. It is simply part of the pattern. You remain still, listening. The room feels the same as before, the faint presence of others nearby, the soft, uneven rhythm of breathing, a small movement somewhere, barely noticeable. Then still again, everything continues without interruption, even in this moment of wakefulness. Nothing demands attention. You adjust slightly, careful not to disturb the space around you. The straw beneath you shifts with a dry, soft sound, familiar now, not disruptive, just present. Your body feels heavy, not uncomfortable, but aware, a quiet awareness of temperature, of position, of contact with the surface beneath you. Everything feels slightly more defined again, as if the mind has risen just enough to observe the world more clearly, but only partially. Thoughts begin to appear, not structured ones, simple fragments, the sense of being awake without needing to be, no pressure to act, no expectation of movement, only presence. You might listen again to the night. It is unchanged, the same sounds exist as before: breathing, wood settling, the distant, almost imperceptible movement of air through gaps. Nothing new has entered the space, only your perception has shifted, and this is what makes the moment feel different. Not the environment, but your awareness of it. You may think briefly of sleep, of how it left, and how it will return, but there is no urgency attached to it, in this world. Waking in the night is not a disruption, it is a pause, a space between layers of rest. You remain like this for a while, still, listening, existing in the quiet center of darkness. And gradually, something softens. The sharpness of awareness begins to fade at the edges, thoughts slow again, breathing deepens slightly, the body starts to forget that it is awake, not suddenly, but gently, like a tide pulling back into itself. You do not resist it, there is no need to. The night continues around you, unchanged, unbothered by your brief return to awareness, and so you allow it. The heaviness returns, first in the limbs, then in the mind. The sense of being awake loosens, softens, it dissolves, and sleep begins to approach again, not as something forced, but as something resumed, as if you never fully left it. The boundary between waking and sleeping becomes less important here, less defined. What matters is not the interruption, but the return, and in that return, there is comfort, a quiet familiarity, like stepping back into something that was always waiting. The sounds of the room remain steady, unchanged, still holding the night in place, and you slowly begin to let go again, not into darkness, but into continuation, because here, even waking in the middle of the night, is just part of sleeping. After waking, and returning, and drifting again, sleep begins to change its shape, not in the room, not in the night, but within you. In medieval times, dreams are not considered separate from reality in the way they are now. They are part of the same continuum, a continuation of thought, softened by sleep, shaped by silence. You are no longer fully aware of the room, but you are not gone from it either. Instead, you slip into something deeper, less structured, more fluid. At first, it is nothing distinct, only fragments, a feeling of movement without direction, a sense of being somewhere, without knowing where. Light appears, but it is not the light of candles or fire. It is softer, diffuse, uncertain. It does not illuminate objects clearly, it suggests them, shapes form and dissolve without staying long enough to be understood. There is no urgency in it, no logic demanding attention, only flow. You may sense familiar things, but altered, a room that feels like yours, yet not exactly, a path that resembles something you know, but shifts when you try to focus on it. In this space, stability is not required, everything is allowed to change, and it does, gently, continuously. There is no sound in the way waking life has sound, but there is presence, a kind of echo of memory, or experience, or emotion. It does not speak, it simply exists. Like drifting through layers of thought that are no longer organized, time loses structure here. Moments do not follow one another clearly, they overlap, merge, separate again. You might feel as if you are both still lying in the medieval room, and somewhere entirely different at the same time. This duality is not confusing in the moment, it simply is. The body remains still, the breath continues, but awareness is no longer anchored to it. It moves freely, without resistance. In medieval understanding, dreams can be seen as messages, reflections, or echoes of something beyond waking life. But here, there is no interpretation, only experience, soft, shifting, uncontained. You drift through scenes that are not fully formed, a space that resembles a corridor, but has no clear end. A landscape that feels familiar, but dissolves when approached, faces that appear briefly, then fade without clarity. Nothing stays long enough to be held, and yet nothing feels threatening. There is no sharpness here, no disruption, only continuous transformation. You become part of that transformation, not observing it, but moving with it, like being carried by something gentle and unseen. There is a strange comfort in this lack of structure, no decisions, no awareness of time, no separation between thought and image. Everything blends into one continuous flow, and slowly, even the sense of you begins to soften, not disappearing, but loosening, less defined, more part of everything else. And yet, somewhere beneath it all, the body remains, resting, breathing, anchored in the real world far below these shifting layers. That connection never fully breaks, it simply becomes quiet, distant, like a thread still holding everything together without being noticed. The dream does not rush, it does not conclude, it simply continues until it begins to fade on its own, not suddenly, but gradually, like mist dissolving with morning light that has not yet arrived. And as it fades, you begin to feel something familiar again: weight, stillness, the sense of lying down, the sense of being here, not drifting anymore, just resting. And the dream, whatever form it took, leaves no clear edges behind, only a gentle residue of calm, as if the mind has been softened, reset, eased, and in that softened state, sleep deepens once more, quiet, stable, unbroken. Sleep does not exist alone in medieval times, it is tied closely to the body, to comfort, to cleanliness, or the lack of it, and to how life itself is lived before night arrives, before you even lie down. There is the question of preparation, not in a modern sense of routine, but in simple practicality. The body carries the day with it. Dust from work, smoke from fires, the faint traces of movement through shared spaces. Nothing is separate, everything accumulates gently over time. Water is not always abundant, and even when it is used carefully. So the idea of clean before sleep is not a structured ritual, it is something simpler, a small act of adjustment, a quiet attempt to make the body feel slightly more settled before rest. You notice the textures of clothing now, rough fabrics, worn by time and use. They are not soft in the way modern materials are, but they are familiar, and familiarity becomes its own kind of comfort. There is no separation between day clothes and sleep clothes in many cases. What you wear is what you rest in. It carries everything with it: warmth, smell, memory of movement, and when you lie down, it becomes part of the bedding itself. The air in the room reflects this reality. It is not sterile, not empty, it holds traces of life: wood, smoke, fabric, earth, human presence, all softened together into a single atmosphere. Not unpleasant, just real. You begin to understand that comfort here is not about purity, it is about balance, between body and environment, between effort and rest. You shift slightly on the bedding, straw responds beneath you. Familiar now, not clean in a modern sense, but known, and that knowledge reduces resistance. Hands may brush against fabric, adjusting folds, smoothing small uneven parts of the bedding. Simple actions, not formal preparation, just making the space feel slightly more manageable. The idea of hygiene is not separate from daily life, it is embedded within it. Water is used when available, hands are washed when possible, face is wiped, but always within limits, always shaped by environment and necessity. And so the body learns adaptation. It does not expect perfection, it expects continuity, and that expectation changes how rest feels. You are not entering sleep as something removed from life, but as part of it, the same body that worked, moved, carried, now settles into stillness, and that transition is natural, not sharply divided, as you lie still. Awareness of the body remains gentle, not focused on flaws or discomfort, but on presence, the sensation of fabric against skin, the softness or roughness of bedding, the faint warmth that remains from movement. Everything is simple, unfiltered. There is no external pressure to appear clean in a modern sense, only the internal sense of readiness for rest, and that readiness is quiet, subtle. You notice how still the room has become, the shared presence of others remains, but less consciously observed now. Everyone has moved into their own version of rest, their own state of acceptance, and in that shared stillness, the room feels unified again, not through action, but through pause. The body begins to settle more deeply, not because everything is ideal, but because nothing is demanding attention anymore. No need to adjust further, no need to prepare more, only rest remains, and slowly, awareness of the physical fades slightly, not disappearing, but softening at the edges. The mind no longer focuses on texture or temperature, it simply exists within them, and that is enough, because here, comfort is not created, it is accepted, and once accepted, it becomes easier to let go. Sleep begins to return, not as escape, but as continuation of a life fully lived in simple, physical reality. And as awareness fades, one quiet understanding remains. In medieval times, rest does not require separation from life, it grows directly out of it. Sleep, in medieval times, does not come with separation, not between day and night, and often not even between activity and rest. The clothes you wear through the day are the clothes that carry you into the night. You notice this now. As you settle deeper into stillness, there is no clear transition, no change of garments that signals the body is ready for sleep in the modern sense. Instead, clothing remains consistent, worn fabric, shaped by hours of movement, heat, labor, and stillness. It rests against the body now, differently than before, not in motion, but in contact, softened slightly by use, but still structured, still present. You become aware of how it feels against the skin. Not perfectly smooth, not uniform, but familiar, and that familiarity becomes important, because in a world where many things are uncertain, the body recognizes what it already knows. There are layers, but not many. Simple garments, loose where they need to be, tight where practicality demands it, designed more for function than comfort, and yet, over time, they become part of comfort anyway, not because they are ideal, but because they are constant. You shift slightly on the bedding, the fabric follows the movement. There is no separation between you and what you wear. Everything moves together, the straw beneath, the cloth above, the body within it all, a single system of rest. In some cases, additional coverings are added for warmth. Simple blankets, rough woven materials, sometimes shared among multiple people in the same space, not individualized, but collective. Another layer of shared life. You feel how the clothing responds to temperature now, how it holds warmth. Slowly, imperfectly, not trapping it entirely, but preserving just enough. The night air presses lightly against everything, but the fabric softens its edge. You are not fully protected from cold, or from touch, or from environment, but you are not entirely exposed either. You exist somewhere in between, and that in between becomes normal. There is no expectation of changing into something specifically for sleep, no distinction between day body and night body. Only continuity, the same physical self, moving through different states of awareness, and the clothing simply follows that transition. It does not define sleep, it accompanies it. You become aware of small adjustments others might make nearby, a shift in fabric, a repositioning of layers, subtle movements that suggest comfort is being negotiated continuously. Even in rest, not once, but repeatedly, because nothing here is perfectly set, everything adapts, even clothing, even stillness, and gradually. Your awareness of fabric fades slightly, not because it disappears, but because it becomes part of the background, like the straw beneath you, like the air in the room. It is simply there, holding shape, holding warmth, holding presence. Your body begins to relax more fully into it, not seeking change anymore, only acceptance. The idea of changing clothes specifically for sleep feels distant in this context, unnecessary, because rest is not separated from life, it grows directly out of it, and the clothing reflects that truth. It is not symbolic, it is functional, and yet it becomes meaningful through use, through repetition, through time. The room around you is still quiet, still shared, still holding multiple forms of rest within it, but your attention is no longer drawn outward, it has narrowed again, into sensation, into presence, into the simple fact of being covered, held, supported by what you already have, and that is enough. Your breathing slows, the fabric no longer feels like an object, only like part of the body's environment, and in that subtle merging, sleep begins to return again, not as a separate state, but as a continuation of everything that came before: clothing, body, space, night, all softening into the same quiet experience. Morning in medieval times does not arrive with clarity, it does not switch the world from darkness to light in a single moment. Instead, it arrives slowly, quietly, like something uncertain, testing whether the night is truly over. At first, there is no clear sign, only a subtle shift in the air, a slight easing of darkness. Almost unnoticeable unless you are already half aware. The night does not disappear, it thins, gradually. Like fabric stretched too far, you are still lying still, the body is heavy, resting deeply. But awareness begins to return in soft fragments, not fully awake, not fully asleep, just gently rising. The room around you remains quiet, but something about it feels different now. Less enclosed, less absolute. The darkness that once filled every corner is no longer as dense, it has softened, diluted by something distant and approaching, light, not direct yet, not visible in strong form, but present in suggestion, a faint shift in tone across the space. You notice it first in the edges, where shadows were once complete. Now they feel slightly lighter, less final. The fire, if it still exists, is nearly gone now, only faint remnants remain, embodied in ash or weak embers, holding on without strength, but even without it. The room begins to change, because the night itself is loosening. You hear small sounds again, not new ones, just the return of ordinary presence. A shift from someone nearby, a slow adjustment of posture, the soft rustle of straw as bodies begin to wake in their own time. There is no urgency, no sudden awakening, only gradual return. You remain still for a moment longer, observing without fully participating. The feeling of rest still lingers in the body. Heavy, but peaceful, like something complete, and yet awareness continues to rise, slowly filling the space that sleep once held. The air feels cooler now in a different way, not the deep cold of night, but the mild freshness that comes before full daylight, a transition temperature, a sign of change. You begin to sense the structure of the room again, the wooden walls, the shared space, the simple objects that were lost in darkness now returning to faint visibility, not fully seen yet, but remembered through light. Outside, something is happening, not loud, not dramatic, just the world shifting, the beginning of movement beyond the walls, and that movement slowly reaches inside. Not through sound alone, but through atmosphere. You become aware of time again, not measured, but felt, the sense that the night has reached its end. even before it is clearly visible, and in that awareness, the body begins to respond, not immediately, but gradually. Fingers move slightly, breathing deepens, muscles release their final tension from the night. There is no rush to stand, no pressure to begin the day, only the quiet transition between states. You lie there, experiencing the space between night and morning, a rare moment where neither fully exists, and in that space, there is calm, a different kind of calm, not the stillness of darkness, but the softness of returning light. Eventually, you become aware of faint illumination entering the room, not direct sunlight yet, but reflected light, soft, pale, spreading slowly across surfaces. It does not overwhelm, it reveals, gradually bringing definition back to the world. Shapes return, edges form again. The room becomes a place once more, rather than a field of shadow. And as awareness fully returns, sleep begins to release its hold completely, not abruptly, but gently, like a tide withdrawing without force. You remain still for a final moment, feeling the full transition complete itself. Night, finally, is over, and morning, slowly, takes its place. By the time morning fully settles in, the night no longer feels like a single experience. It feels like something you pass through, layer by layer, moment by moment, and now, in the soft return of light, you are left with something quieter, reflection. In medieval times, rest is not treated as something separate from life. It is not isolated, it is not optimized, it is simply part of existence, a necessary pause between days that are filled with labor, movement, and survival. And because of that, sleep carries meaning in a different way, not as escape, but as continuation. You remain still for a while longer. The room is now faintly visible, not bright, but readable. The shapes of things are no longer hidden, they are simply present. The bedding beneath you, the shared space around you, the subtle marks of human presence that remained through the night. Everything feels familiar again, but also slightly distant, as if you are returning from somewhere that no longer fully belongs to waking life. You begin to notice how your body feels, not refreshed in a modern sense, but steady, rebalanced, the kind of rest that does not erase fatigue completely, but softens it enough to continue. And in this world, that is enough. There is no expectation of perfect recovery, no idea that sleep must restore everything entirely, only that it must allow life to continue. And so it does. You think, briefly, about how sleep has shaped the night, not as a single continuous event, but as something layered, interrupted, shared, darkened, softened, cold at times, comforting at others, never ideal, but always present. And within that imperfection, there is something deeply human, because rest is not separate from struggle here, it exists within it. You begin to hear movement outside the room now. The quiet beginning of activity returning, not sudden, not overwhelming, just gradual signs that the world is waking along with you. The night is no longer in control, but it is still present in memory. You shift slightly, not to leave the space yet, but to acknowledge it one last time. The place where sleep happened, not in perfect comfort, not in silence, but in continuity with life itself, and that continuity is what defines it. Sleep is not an escape from the world, it is the way the world pauses long enough to continue, and in that understanding, there is a quiet kind of appreciation, not dramatic, not emotional, just steady, simple recognition, that rest in this time is not about ideal conditions, it is about endurance, about adaptation, about the ability of the body and mind to find stillness wherever they can. And now, as morning settles fully, that stillness begins to release you, slowly, naturally, without force. The night has done its work, and the day waits to begin. Now, everything is still, not because the world has stopped, but because the night has fully released its hold. morning light is no longer uncertain, it is present, gentle, steady, and quietly filling the space that once belonged to darkness in medieval times. There is no sharp division between ending and beginning, the night does not finish. It simply fades until it is no longer noticed, and sleep, the strange companion of that night, feels the same. You begin to understand it now in a different way, not as comfort alone, and not as hardship either, but as something deeply woven into the rhythm of life itself, a necessity shaped by environment, by limitation, by shared existence. You remain still for a final moment. The room around you is no longer the same place it was hours before. It has changed without moving. Light has done that. It reveals what darkness hid. But it does not transform anything fundamentally. Everything is still simple, still humble, still human. The bedding, the wooden structure, the quiet presence of others beginning their day, all of it remains connected to what happened during the night, as if sleep never truly separated from waking life at all, only shifted it. You think, briefly, about how different rest feels when it is not controlled, when it is not scheduled, when it is not separated from survival, weather, space, or shared living. Sleep becomes less of a personal escape and more of a collective experience, something shaped by time, place, and circumstance. And yet, even within those limits, there is still peace, not perfect peace, but enough for the body to continue, enough for the mind to soften, enough for the world to feel bearable again. When morning arrives, you begin to notice small movements outside the room again, life resuming its cycle, not abruptly, but inevitably. The same inevitability that brought night now brings day, and somewhere between those two, you existed, resting, breathing, unaware, then aware, then resting again, and now returning fully as you prepare to rise. There is a final quiet thought. Sleep is not only something that happens, it is something that reflects the world it exists in, and in medieval times, that world was closer, colder, shared, unfiltered, and still, it carried rest within it, not perfectly, but consistently, enough to continue. And as you finally shift from stillness, there is a subtle sense that the night is not truly gone, only waiting, somewhere behind the coming day, ready to return again when time allows, because in the world of sleep, nothing is ever truly final, only paused.